Hi, everyone, and welcome to our November webinar. My name is Justine Chappell. I'm the Communications and Marketing Manager for ZAPP. In today's webinar, I'm going to reveal some of the responses we got in our annual surveys, both the ZAPP Administrator Experience and Event Insight Survey, the one that you all took, and then the ZAPP Artist Experience and Insight Survey. Before I do that, I'm also going to be sharing some statistics with you that we've pulled from our data in ZAPP. So the intention of this webinar is to share, some of what we've learned from the surveys. If you remember taking them, we asked questions about your experience using ZAPP and some other information about your organization, but we also asked you to share what's important to you and what concerns you're facing in the years to come. We asked pretty similar questions to artists, and while we won't be sharing everything from the survey, some of the info we gathered was more for internal purposes and honestly would bore you. We'll hit on the key points that we think you'll find the most useful or insightful. We're going to start by going over some statistics that we've pulled from ZAPP from the last fiscal year. So ZAPP operates on a fiscal year from October 1st to September 30th. So most of these stats I'm going to show you are from that time period. And we just have a few things that I think, you might just be interested to see and hopefully learn from. So first of all, in the fiscal year 23, so October 1st, 2022 to September 30th, there were 973 total shows or events listed on ZAPP. And you can see here, we just have a breakdown of the regions in the US. The region borders matches what the US Census does. So we have 198 shows. We had 198 shows in the West, 284 in the Midwest, 56 in the Northeast, and 435 in the South. And, I'm just showing the map here. The regions that are different colors don't really mean anything, but I'm just kind of showing you these 4 breakdowns of the region. So kind of interesting to see, how many events we have in each region, and kind of gives you a good idea of, where things are located. I also have for you a breakdown of when the events take place. So you'll see we have it run by month, so October through September. And you can see the breakdown between those regions as well. So this graph is kind of interesting because it shows what we're, all familiar with, what ZAPP is definitely familiar with, but maybe if you don't know, it's very cyclical in nature every year, in which we have certain shows, especially the South, putting on shows in maybe some of the colder months. And then we have, a lot of our summer months being that busier season where there's a lot of events taking place. Again, it's stuff that as organizers, you already know, and artists also focus on that kind of festival season, but it's always fun to see it in graph form, where those events are taking place and when. The next thing I want to show is the breakdown of deadlines. So in ZAPP, March has our most application deadlines, or did at least last year, and it usually does. So we had 144 events have their application deadlines in March. Again, you can kind of see these period of time between January and June where those applications are really coming in a lot. This is what the ZAPP support team is familiar with as our busy season. In March, we just know every year that there's going to be a lot of artists applying on ZAPP, and we just need to know that we need to have coverage for support needs during that time. And then kind of similarly, May had the most invitation deadlines. So these are the deadline dates that artists must return to ZAPP and accept or reject their invite, and then, proceed to go on and start purchasing their booth products or other post-jury fees. And again, we have high support needs around this time. Again, March, April, and then May was our busiest time of this in the past year. So we kind of just predict that year over year. And you'll see it's kind of interesting how, it's a steadier flow throughout the summer month as folks, start accepting their invites, figuring out what shows they're going to actually attend, and start, purchasing those booths. Next, I will show you that we had about 29,150 new artist accounts created between October and September of last year. So you'll see a breakdown also per month, of when artists are joining. Obviously, this kind of follows the time period where folks are starting to apply to events. So new artists are creating accounts and submitting their applications. It's important to note here as well in this number that artists who have used ZAPP in the past and do apply to shows can and often do create duplicate artist accounts. ZAPP will deactivate user accounts after 24 months of inactivity. And instead of coming to us and having us reactivate their account, they might just create a new account instead. So we do get a lot of duplicate accounts, and we're working on ways to figure out, what's an easier way to let folks reactivate their accounts if they've been away from the festival world in 2 years. So just take that into consideration with this number, but it's still likely that there are thousands of artists joining ZAPP throughout the year, whether they want to look for new opportunities to show their work, or as festivals start using ZAPP, their artist base switches over too, so we get new artists joining. You'll see the map here breakdown of new users by zip code, so we're able to see, based on the zip code they enter in their profile, where these artists are located. And, this distribution pretty closely matches the, returning artist distribution, just like the overall spread of where artists are located. Next, I have some stats about average fees. So in our fiscal year last year, the average application or jury fee on ZAPP was $31.99 for small shows and $37.41 for standard shows. So ZAPP has the different pricing plans, and we just separated out the small shows that usually accept under 500 applications as compared to standard shows, which accept more than 500 applications. They sometimes have a difference in their products that they sell and their jury fees. Not so much of a difference between the application or jury fee, but you'll see in the average booth fee, there is quite a difference there, where the average booth fee amongst small shows was $322.86, and the average booth fee among standard shows, those accepting more applications, was $519. So you do see that breakdown there. And it's also important to note that some shows do have quite pricey booth packages, depending on their demand or how much interest they have. So, averages include some outliers in there, but this gives a pretty good idea of what we typically see in ZAPP. Next, we have some other statistics looking at the jurying and whether or not juries include the artist names. It's important to note here, I'm looking at the calendar year of 2023. So this is all looking at the events that have or will have their event jury in 2023. So in the past year, 699 juries conducted on ZAPP showed the artist names to jurors. As you know, there's a setting in the back end where you can show or hide the artist names from the jurors. And then 294 juries hid the artist names from the jurors, otherwise known as conducting a blind jury. So just, looking at the breakdown there, we did pull this information back when we had a conversation about equitable jurying and how it's something to consider when you're thinking about both fairness towards artists and having their names hidden, or having their names shown and giving more information about the artist to find out more about their background. So it's just something that everyone has a preference for, and it's just interesting to see the differences in the numbers. That said, the showing the artist names is the default setting. So unless you specifically change it to hide artist names, you would be having a not blind jury. And so that number might include those folks that don't pay attention to that setting necessarily. Speaking of blind juries, here at ZAPP, over the next year or so, we're going to be looking at the ways that our language throughout our site is presented, and we might be moving away from the term blind jury just to keep it more accessible and inclusive, focusing on whether or not you're showing or hiding artist names versus conducting blind juries, just keeping in mind disabled artists and how there's a difference there. So that's something that we'll be looking at in the next year. So that's just like a little slew of statistics that we received in the last year. Obviously, there's other information that we have, but we found that this would be the most insightful for you. Next, I want to talk about the ZAPP admin survey that we conducted, and I'll show you the results. First, I have some details for you, just to kind of show you how the survey was conducted, and this is going to act as sort of a disclaimer before we get to the results. So the ZAPP Administrator Experience and Event Insight Survey was conducted August 9th through October 1st of this year. And we conducted the survey by sending out emails to you all, promoting the survey throughout our site and our newsletters, and encouraging folks to take the survey. We received 96 responses from administrators, and for context, we have about 1,400 active administrator accounts on ZAPP. So just keep that in mind as we go through the results, that the responses don't necessarily reflect the majority of people that use ZAPP, but it does reflect a decent sample of our customers. No survey can expect to see full participation, and we know that, but the team, in years to come, we do hope to increase the number of responses so that we have a more accurate look at our customers. We also know people don't like taking surveys, but we do rely on these for considering technical updates to our site, tracking customer satisfaction throughout the years, and now also collecting industry insights to hopefully share back with our users. So just keep that in mind as we go through. So first, we'll take a look at what is important to you all, what is important to festival organizers. And based on our survey, the having a high overall artist satisfaction is considered to be the most important metric of a successful event, followed by positive community and or economic impact, and high artist sales. So you can see that breakdown here. So again, this is where folks had to choose one option as the most important metric to them. So, showing what festival organizers value most, and that's, making sure artists have what they need and are satisfied with the event overall. You can make some assumptions based on these results. This one could, assume that, you want artists to return the next year and apply again, and overall running an event that's good for everyone. So that's nice to see that artist satisfaction is valued, especially when you compare that to what was not chosen, which was meeting and exceeding budget goals, or receiving awards or recognition in the industry. I'm sure all of these things are important at some capacity, but those most important things are positive impact to the community, and ensuring artists can be successful by attending the event. The event attendance one here is an interesting result, showing that it's not as important, pretty rarely important to organizers. And I just want to call that out right now, but we're going to put a pin in that because I'm going to reference it when we talk about the artist survey. So just keep that in mind, and we'll come back to that topic there. Another thing we asked in the admin survey is about collecting demographic information from festival patrons. 40% of respondents say their festival does collect demographic information from patrons. And we asked this question to see if that's something festivals kept track of. And personally, that's a little bit higher than I thought. So that's neat to see that, folks are keeping track of who is attending their event. And then as a follow-up question, we asked if respondents think that the demographic makeup of the exhibiting artists closely, or how it aligns with the demographic and makeup of their community that their event is taking place. And 59% said that their demographic makeup of exhibiting artists somewhat closely aligns with the demographic makeup of their community. So that's pretty good to know as well. Obviously, this is kind of a subjective question that asks respondents to either make a guess or an educated guess on, the alignment. Maybe they do have that information available, and that's great. But we just wanted to get a general idea of where folks think they are. And we learned, that the majority of events do think that the demographics match up, which is good to see. So, as ZAPP continues to provide resources for how you can consider your event, and what you can do to make your event more inclusive if that's something of value to you. These are some of the things that we're looking at of just, finding out where there might be gaps or if there are gaps. We also asked administrators to respond to their top concerns about the future of events. And we asked for folks to choose one out of a list or include a different response in the other category. So we found in this that increasing event production costs and the aging population of exhibiting artists are the top concerns facing organizers, in terms of the future of events, followed closely by other, which I'll talk about in a second, and climate change and its impact on outdoor events. We tried listing most, if not all, of the concerns that we gathered in the past to take a temperature check on what's worrying you all, essentially. And then, production and costs definitely aligns with what we see in today's economy and the aging population as well. That aligns in what we see in both ZAPP and Cafe, Call for Entry, which is our other platform. That's something that is being taken into account, in terms of the future of events and getting, younger artists to join festivals and apply to festivals so that they can continue on the legacy there. Climate change, too, also a threat. Unpredictable and more frequent extreme weather events will take a toll on outdoor events. We recently had a blog post that discussed this topic, so you can go to our ZAPPlication.org homepage and click the blog post that discussed this. We kind of talked with a few events on their experiences dealing with natural disasters and extreme weather, essentially finding that there's a greater need for stronger tents and equipment and emergency preparedness and communication strategies. But it also shows, the resiliency of events to come back. We also saw that with COVID as well, but even with, extreme weather events, events do come back, buyers come back, artists come back, and still have a successful event. But obviously, we'll have to see how that goes with time, but you can see that that's definitely something that folks are concerned about. And then you can see some of the other responses. I'll read these off. Some other things that we saw as concerns to administrators were competing markets for getting submissions and artists trying to sell, declining volunteer base, getting crowds that are buyers and not just lookers, grant funding availability, increasing festival patrons, oversaturation in the area, so fewer artists interested, and then reduced traffic. So those are just some other things that were mentioned on the survey that I wanted to make sure we included. I'm sure some of you can all relate to this, and we're going to be keeping track of these things. And just in general, in ZAPP, we want to tailor some of our resources to what you all are thinking about and dealing with on the ground. And so we'll be taking a look at some of these things. I'm now going to switch to talk about the artist survey. I think you'll find this more insightful maybe than the other one because you can relate to those results. But for the artists, now you get a little bit of an insight into what they said on their survey. Again, sort of just overviewing the details and providing a little disclaimer. Our survey was conducted August 9th through October 1st, same as the other one. For artists, we received 1,239 responses. But just for context, we have about 90,000 active artist accounts. Again, not everyone's active on ZAPP between this time period. So unless they're diligent with their emails and really, wanting to fill out a survey, we might not capture everyone. But this will be a sample of the artists that did respond. So first of all, we asked artists to talk about their overall artistic career, and we just wanted to get a sense of what other types of art opportunities do they seek out in addition to fairs and festivals. So we did list fairs and festivals as one of the options. So of course, we saw 94 of respondents said they seek out art fairs and festivals. But 48% also seek out art exhibitions, 34% seek out art competitions, about 24% also seek out grants, which is interesting to note, and 16% artist in residence programs. So, we saw a good range. This kind of follows what you might expect artists that seek out, both exhibiting at festivals to sell their work and also wanting to exhibit in a gallery. That's just looking at their overall career. I want to take a moment here to give kind of like a shameless plug. But if you are working for any organizations that offer some of these opportunities that are not art fairs and festivals, maybe you have a concurrent gallery exhibition with your festival, maybe you're starting a grant program for your festival, or and anything else with your organization. Don't forget that we have Cafe and Go. These are other WestStaff funded programs that can help you in those processes as well. So Cafe, or Call for Entry, is the platform where you can collect applications very similar to ZAPP. The whole process is very similar. Collect applications and jury them into specific gallery exhibitions or competitions. And then Go Smart is our grant tool that allows you to collect submissions for grants, and that kind of is a more tailored process for the grant process, and can help you with that. So if anyone needs anything for any of these opportunities, we also offer these tools. Because it's all under WestStaff, we do have some discounts that if you're an existing ZAPP customer, you may be able to get for Cafe and Go Smart. And I'll provide an email at the end that you can reach out to the ZAPP team, where then you can then connect about some of these other options. All right, shameless plug over. The next thing I want to talk about is when we asked artists to talk about what affects their decision to apply to events, and then also later on, what affects their decision to return to events. So when we asked about what are the factors that most heavily influence an artist's decision to apply to an event, they said cost of booth fee is the top factor, followed closely by distance to travel. You can see there's a lot of factors here, and artists got to choose up to 5, so keep that in mind. And so, we're looking at when an artist is considering an event, maybe for the first time, and they're looking at the event details in ZAPP, and they're, considering all the ways that applying to an event and possibly participating in it is going to affect their festival season. So the first top choice amongst artists that responded were cost of booth fee. So looking at that, the top cost that it would take, closely aligned with distance to travel, that probably also ties into the cost to travel, definitely is something that we probably all are aware of, and pretty much closely aligns with, how artists consider their festival season overall. So remember the pin I told you to put into the topic of event attendance? Estimated event attendance was ranked 3rd in terms of what artists look for when making their decision. So they're looking at what estimate number do you have of attendance. That's pretty, self-explanatory, because, folks are wanting to look at the attendance and hope that they have a good chance of selling their work. So that's something that they do really look at. And we'll look at that in the next question as well. And then you see we have a lot of middle ground here. A lot were ranked kind of, high in terms of the time of year, cost of the application, clarity of event details, seeing that they have all the information they need. Number of years, this is cut off, but it says number of years the festival has been taking place. So kind of, the reputation of the festival. And then, so we have, middle range there. We also have some that weren't ranked as high. And so maybe you can glean some insights from that. Artist awards offered, not ranked as high as maybe personally I would thought. But, you can see that artists might be more interested in what it's going to take for them versus what they can get out of it in terms of awards. Emerging artist program, that's ranked low. Likely most of the people that responded to this survey are not emerging artists, so they don't necessarily need to know that information. So you can take a look here. So in kind of similar question to this about the artist's decision to apply to an event, we also asked about the factors that impact their decision to participate in an event year after year. So in this one, total sales is the top factor that significantly impacts their decision, followed closely by festival attendance again. So, if this is an artist that is considering going back to the same festival, these are the things that they're looking at. They, obviously, if they had a good year there at that event for sales, they might want to return, gain recognition amongst that community. Festival attendance, again, making sure that their artwork can be seen by a lot of folks. Ease of load in and load out is pretty important. Makes sense. They want to have a smooth process getting inside the event and everything set up. So that's pretty high. So those three were the top. And then this is followed by, booth location, where they can be helpfulness of staff, weather, proximity to affordable food and lodging is what they said. Friendliness of patrons, and some other ones down below. Again, cash prizes and on-site awards was ranked kind of low. I'm not sure what that means still to you, so I'd be interested to know if that pings anything for you. And then, availability of booth sitters. These are some of the things that we listed that we thought could be possible factors, and just ask them to rank those, or not rank them, but choose up to 3 in this case, I think, that were most impactful to them. And then we also asked artists to talk about their top concerns facing their careers in the next 3 to 5 years. So cost of application and booth fees, cost of travel, and economic uncertainty were the top 3 concerns facing artists in the next 3 to 5 years. So you can see that here. Pretty even in terms of the top things. They were able to select up to 3 issues that they find the most critical. So you can tell, anything related to cost is things that artists are facing the most at the moment. Climate change a little bit lower than we had with the admins, likely because they aren't the ones organizing the events and making sure that it goes smoothly, but it does impact their ability to present their work. So that's also on there. This wouldn't be an exhaustive list as well. We know that there's a lot of things artists are facing, but we try to pick the ones that we have seen the most relatable in the last few years here. So you can kind of see the breakdown, just giving you time to look at the screen if you want, but just, AI generated artwork, whether or not that's a concern, increased competition, and, supply chain and needs and availability of materials. That might also be related to, most of the cost of their work. And then I also pulled some from this other category here, just so you can see some comments left by artists. Again, this was out of, about 1,200 responses. So I just pulled a few that I think you'd find the most insightful, and the ones that were most kind of easily explained by the artist. Other concerns facing them is changing way people shop, more online, less at shows, the decline in interest for handmade items, festival patrons not purchasing art, browsing instead, increasing cost of materials, need for more indoor art fairs, maybe that's related to weather, getting declined with no explanation or feedback. So that might be an interesting thing. We did see this response a lot throughout the survey of folks that are wanting to get that feedback from artists or from the jury to see whether or not. I know that that's something that you might try to offer. It is hard to do on a grand scale, but if you are able to, I know artists do appreciate offering or getting that feedback back. And then the final one that I listed here is the lack of younger artists practicing their creative process for showing at art festivals. So again, it's kind of that, aging population of the generation of artists that are showing at events, and the need for younger emerging artists to participate. Those are a little bit of the insights from the artist survey. And I want to give space now for any questions or comments about what I discussed here. Lori asked in the chat, can I send hard copies of the survey results? I will be sending and sharing what we have in the webinar here. Yes, we are not going to be at this time, at least, we're still considering what actual survey results we share in like a report. But everything here that I have in the webinar we'll be sharing with you, yes. I do see a question, can I talk a bit about the grants? All I was really sharing in that is if you have, if you or anyone on this call offer a grant program or creating a grant program, WestStaff, which is our parent organization, also has a tool called Go Smart, which is a portal specifically used to collect grant applications, and that could be really useful to you. GoSmart is a little bit different than ZAPP and Call for Entry in that it doesn't list publicly available grant opportunities. It's more of a back-end system that those who use it can then post and share their URL that goes through GoSmart. So there's no real browsing opportunities for artists to seek out grant opportunities. Call for Entry does include some grant opportunities, so you can check there. But that's all I really have to share about grant opportunities now. The WestF website also has, a list of grant opportunities that you can check out. That might be more broad arts and culture sector related. I hope that helps. And if you want to talk further, you can reach out to us. We hope that this, first survey that includes more industry insights is the first of kind of building on that in future impact surveys, essentially, where we can collect information from the industry and share it with you all so that you have that available to you. And so if you have any feedback about what we covered in the survey, both when you took it and today, I'm happy to have that information. There's our email. You all know it, zapphelp@westf.org. You can definitely email us there and let us know what you think or anything you'd like to know from artists or from your fellow administrators. And we can keep those notes for the next time we do the survey and start asking kind of questions that get at some of these topics and take a temperature on the industry. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope to see you at our next webinar.